Re-rolls are significantly less common in the new edition.
So that was a fucking lie.
Greetings everyone, my name is Rejnols, and the light is making my camera look awful. But welcome to the Warhammer 40,000 faction focus, this time looking at the Space Marines. Now you might be wondering why I am so late to the party talking about this, seeing as this came out like a billion years ago. Well, I wanted to wait and see more factions before I started talking about them, because I wanted some more context about where we are when it comes to power and which rules are gonna be common across the factions and which aren't. But yeah, if I wanted more views, I definitely should have done this a little bit earlier, but oh well, here we are. So, the very first 10th edition preview we get to look at is the Space Marines. And the Space Marines were my first faction coming into Warhammer 40,000, and it's the first faction of a lot of people. And I kind of feel like if you ask 5 players who play Warhammer which faction they have, or what army they have, they will say one of them be Space Marines. It is just such a common army, and it makes sense that they show them off, they're the poster boys, blah 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 blah. Anyways, without further ado, let's just take a look at it. Now, I'm not going to look too much at all the flavor text is really cool. But we're here for the rules, to talk about the good stuff. Now, first of all, as you all know, coming into 10th edition, actually not even 10th edition, coming into Arcs of Omen, Space Marines lost Armor of Contempt, but they were compensated by the entire army, basically getting 20% off every unit and free war gear. And in any case, Space Marines are not an elite army right now. They're very much a horde army, putting as many models on the table as so many other factions. Kinda silly, but it seems like they want Space Marines to go back to being more of an elite faction. At least that's what they said when they showed off the Oath of Moment rule. Now, we had a little joke about that at the start of the video, but the Oath of Moment faction rule says this. If your army faction is Adeptus Astartes, at the start of your command phase, select one unit from your opponent's army. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a model from your army with this ability makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, you can reroll the hit roll and you can reroll the wound roll. On top of this, every faction gets an army ability regardless of which detachment you're using. This represents the totemic aspect of the faction in the... Rerolls are significantly less common in this new edition. No, I'm just joking, because I am actually one of those people that truly believe that there are less rerolls in the game. Now, we haven't seen even close to all the data sheets, so this could of course change. But people freaking out about this needs to think about it. So, is this a good army rule? Because you get this no matter which kind of Space Marines you're playing, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, doesn't matter. This is your army rule. And yes, as I said, this is a very strong ability and will be really good against armies that go for a few big things, like Imperial Knights. You can use this to target down an Imperial Knight or an Armiger and just really make sure that thing dies. For that, this is really good. For the people that say that rerolls are... they're not rare, they're just everywhere. No, they're not. This is a faction rule for one faction. So yes, Space Marines have on-demand hit and wound rerolls. I get that. However, current edition, you can take, say, a Chapter Master. Chapter Master can give full hit rerolls to any unit within 6, basically. That means no matter what you want, they can get rerolls. He also has a reroll aura, and again, means that you can get basically whatever you want to have those rerolls. What we have seen so far in 10th edition previews is that the rerolls are tied to the data sheet. So under certain circumstances, you then get the rerolls. Whereas before, you could give rerolls to what exactly you wanted simply by being within 6 inches. I think there's a huge difference between having rerolls when you're doing something specific, or just having them because you stood within 6 inches of a guy who's called the captain. Anyways, reroll ran over, that's just my take on it. So yeah, the Oath of Moment rule is really strong, obviously gonna be really good against any army that brings a big thing that the opponent wants to focus. Now do keep in mind that it's at the start of the player's command phase that they say which unit they're pointing at. This is also really strong because then that means that your opponent, if your opponent has first turn, they move out their big thing, then when it's your turn, you can target that big thing because, well, you can see it. You know where it is. It's gonna get shot. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're going to be playing against Space Marines, is that you probably need to hide your big thing, otherwise they'll just target it and then it's gonna be gone, most likely. It's hard to tell, because the game is obviously changing a lot. AP is down, strength is down, toughness is up, all these things gonna impact how easy it is to kill something big. But Oath of Moment is certainly let's focus this target and kill it good. Anyways, that was the Oath of Moment ability. Very, very good. Now if we scroll down a bit further, we take a look at the detachment rule. Probably should explain this at the start, but every army basically has their army rule for Space Marines, that is the Oath of Moment rerolls. And then your sub-faction, which is now called a detachment, grants you whatever detachment rule is equal to sub-faction rules today. That was also a really bad way of saying it. In any case, let's say that Space Marines have 5 different detachments. One of those detachments is going to be the Gladius Task Force detachment, which will have the Combat Doctrine rules. And Combat Doctrine rules are looking real good. If you played during 9th edition, Combat Doctrines usually just gave you +1 AP to a certain weapon, depending on which doctrine you're in, and then depending on which chapter you were playing, you would get further bonuses, such as the Salamanders getting +1 to wound with Flamer and Melta weapons in the Tactical Doctrine. But now instead, when you're playing the Gladius Task Force detachment, you can once per game at the start of your command phase choose one of these 3 doctrines, and then your units will get that ability. The Devastator Doctrine will grant your unit access to advance and shoot. This is obviously really good for some things like, let's say, an Ultramarine list. Now, I say Ultramarine list, but Ultramarines technically doesn't exist anymore, kinda. In any case, if you're building a list like you're building an Ultramarine list today, where you have a lot of firepower, but maybe not that much melee, Devastator Doctrine is amazing, because you can position your things where you want them to be, or at least push them further towards where they want to be, and still be able to shoot, because you can advance and shoot. That's really good. The Tactical Doctrine, also really good for a shooting army, but also very good for a melee army, because you can fall back, shoot, and charge. Super strong for both shooting armies that manage to survive a melee encounter, and really good for a melee army that maybe want to change targets because they killed everything but one model in a unit and now they want to move on to the next thing instead of staying in combat and having to kill that off. So that's really amazing as well. Very, very strong ability. And then finally, the Assault Doctrine, which will allow you to advance and charge. And oh boy, I already see all the Blood Angel players with all their Death Company, Thunderhammer, Sanguinary Guard bullshit piling in on top of me, and I'm already crying. I may or may not have had some bad experiences with the turn 1 Alpha Strike from the Blood Angels. But these are all obviously super powerful abilities, but they are tied to, or they are limited to once per game. So you pick one, let's say the Devastator Doctrine in turn 2, and now you cannot use the Devastator Doctrine in turn 3 or turn 4 or turn 5. That one's gone. It's one and done. I think this is so much better than getting +1 AP, because honestly, a lot of the time it mattered. It mattered. But it was always just a rush getting to whatever doctrine your sub-faction of Space Marines had their bonuses in. If you were playing Blood Angels, you did not care about staying in Devastator Doctrine or Tactical Doctrine for any longer than you needed to be. You just want to go straight to the Assault Doctrine. And if you were playing Salamanders, you didn't care about being in Devastator Doctrine nearly as much because you wanted to go into Tactical Doctrine to get +1 to wound with Flamers and Melta. And then there's the Iron Hands, who basically got fucked if their opponent didn't have turn 1, where they had to move some things out for them to shoot, because then they just lost Devastator Doctrine because it was only active for 1 turn. This was before Arcs of Omen, by the way, where you could just choose to stay in the same doctrine all the time. My point being that while it's cool on paper being like, oh yeah, I need my rapid fire weapons to be a bit stronger now, and now I need my melee weapons to be a bit stronger, unfortunately, when you have rules tied to rules, you kind of just want to get to the point where they line up with each other. And yeah, telling someone who's playing Space Marines that they don't get half of their sub-faction bonus until they're in a specific doctrine just kind of sucked. So honestly, I'm just happy to see it's a different system altogether. Are these abilities too strong? I don't know. They are strong abilities. They are once per game. I mean, Orcs, Advance and Charge, really strong. Advance and Shoot, also really good. Look at the Tau. And Fall Back, Shoot, and Charge is where maybe I'm like, If they only made it fall back and shoot or fall back and charge, then it would cater towards, a few factions more than the other. If it was just fall back and charge, then, Blood Angels and Space Wolves would be really happy about it. But shooting Space Marines like, say, Imperial Fist and Ultramarines would kind of be like, can't really use this for anything. So I get why they need to do both. But that's the one that strikes me as, holy shit, that is good no matter which Space Marine faction you're playing, or sub-faction or army you've built. Whereas the two others obviously are better for a melee or a shooting army. But yeah, combat doctrines, really good, very strong, excited to see how strong they are, because Space Marines, as far as I'm aware, spoiler alert here, not spoiler alert, just a little note, I started playing about, what is it now, 1.5 years ago, a bit more than 1.5 years ago, so I've never been part of a new edition start, but I've heard from people that obviously Space Marines tend to come out just a little bit strong because they are the poster boys, and a lot of people play that army. If this is too strong, then you know what? It's a good thing, because not only are they making the rules more simple, but because of the new system about detachments, when their new codex comes out, they don't have to include this detachment. They can just be like, oh yeah, that was too strong. We're now adding 3 new detachments, but this one is gone, or they rewrite it, or whatever it may be. Anyways, I've already spoken for like 10 minutes and I haven't even gotten to the data sheets. Now, the unit spotlights for the Space Marine faction focus are the Land Raider, as well as Robute Guilliman, or Robot Gorilla Man, or whatever you want to call them. And vehicles certainly have gotten a glow up in this edition, at least in terms of toughness. The mighty Land Raider was rarely seen in 9th edition, mostly because it was way too expensive for what it did. Let's see if we can find it here. It was heavy support, so Land Raider. Right, here we go. So the Land Raider, as you can see here, it was 10-inch movement, weapon skill 6, ballistic skill 3, 8, 16, 6, 9, 2. Whereas now we're looking at 10, 12, 2, 16, and then leadership 6 and OC 5. This is actually what caught me, surprised me the most, OC 5, which is objective control. So this guy can actually tie up objectives against, say, Terminators, because Terminators only have objective control 1. But compare the Land Raider here to the Land Raider here, and you can see the toughness has been shot up, right? We went from toughness 8 to toughness 12. Now, toughness in 9th edition translated to toughness in 10th edition is a bit of a weird scale, because they go up all the way to, is 18 the highest we've seen? Or 14? 16? I don't remember. The monolith for the Necrons, big boy, very tough. But the toughness going to 12 means that something like a Melta weapon can no longer wound a Land Raider on 4s. It's actually being pushed to 5s, because multi-Meltas, or Meltas in general, are strength 9, as we can see right here. Now, we still don't know the cost of the Land Raider, but here is what they have now. The range weapons it can have, actually, now that I say this, can they equip all these weapons, or is it like choose some of these? Can be equipped with one, the most transport capacity. Yes, so they can have all these weapons. It is simply a matter of how many points you want to pay extra to get them. Got it. The Godhammer Last Cannon is now 48-inch range, 2 attacks, ability skill 3, strength 12, so it could wound another Land Raider on 4s, AP 3, and D6 plus 1 damage. Whereas before, it was the twin Last Cannon. Same range, same number of shots, strength is, 9 getting pushed to 14, I suppose. Or sorry, to 12. Minus 3 d6. So it actually gained a point of damage, and it also, same ability skill. And strength is, as again, I'm not going to talk too much about strength and toughness translations, because it's still a bit up in the air, because the Rhino went from toughness 7 to toughness 9. However, the Imperial Knight Armigers went from toughness 7 to toughness 10. So it's not like an equal curve where you can just say what was toughness 7 before is now toughness 9. It depends on the unit. So we'll have to wait and see. In any case, the last cannon, we're talking about the last cannon, basically remains the same as it was before. It has a new name now. It's the Godhammer last cannon instead of the twin last cannon. And it's gained a point of damage. Instead of just being d6, it is d6 plus 1. I hate when damage is d6. And I know why it's in the game, because some weapons are hard to reflect. And of course, it's super cool to have the potential of dealing 6 damage. But it feels oh so bad when you just get 1. So it being d6 plus 1 alleviates that pain. At the very least, you can count on it doing 2 damage. Rolling a d6 for damage still sucks in my opinion, but it's a dice game. I get it. And hey, all things considered, it's better now. Moving on to the Hunter Killer Missile, it has the one-shot keyword, which I'm gonna go ahead and guess means it can fire once. And it is 48-inch range, one shot, ballistic skill 2, I think that's really important, strength 14, AP 3, damage D6, the dreaded D6. This is something I think that I really want to commend Games Workshop on doing really well, is now that the datasheet indicates the weapons, they can change up the ballistic skill. Instead of saying the unit has a ballistic skill of this, instead the weapon has a ballistic skill of X. Which I think is really cool. The Hunter Killer Missile should hit better than all the other weapons because it's a missile. It goes up in the air, it tracks its targets, and then it goes down. So it makes sense that it hits better. In terms of the profile, we're seeing it go from strength 10 to strength 14. So it'll actually wound another Land Raider on 3s. And then damage is the same, and AP is the same. AP2. Oh no, it's AP3. So Hunter Killer Missiles as well as the Godhammer last cannon gotten an upgrade in terms of a few of the stats. And there's so many guns in this. I'm sorry, I'm so slow. I am so slow. The multi-melta with the Melta 2 keyword. If you don't know what this keyword means, it means that if you are within half range, add the number to the damage of the weapon. So if Melta 2, that means that if you're in half range, which would be 9 inches, you deal d6 plus 2 damage instead of d6 damage. However, if a different Melta weapon might have Melta 4, and then you deal whatever plus 4 within half range. So another good change, because they were kind of tied down by the Melta rule, whereas it was just always plus 2 damage to whatever damage was before. Now they can adjust it. They can say like, okay, the heavy Melta is plus 3, and the Melta gun or Melta pistol or whatever is plus 1, or whatever it may be. But the Melta basically stayed the same as before. Multi-Melta, 2 shots, hitting on 3s, strength 9, and AP 4, damage D6. Everything here except for the range as well as the strength value are the same as they are in 9th edition. I think a lot of people took, what do you call them? Eradicators. They took Eradicators very personally because 24-inch range on anti-tank shooting, it's fine. But it's fine when it's on something maybe not a 30 point character model. They were very strong. They also had total obliteration, so they could shoot twice, and they kind of just wrecked house. So taking the anti-tank, taking the multi-melta's potential of sniping tanks from afar by cutting the range down, probably a solid choice. I can totally see that one. As a Salamander's enjoyer, I am sad, but it's fine. I see why they did it. Strength went from 8 to 9, which means it's a slight nerf, I believe. Because as we were saying, strength 8 before would wound a Rhino on 3s because it was toughness 7. But now it's actually wounding a Rhino on 4s because the Rhino is toughness 8. So it would have to go to approximately strength 10 before it would be the same as before. So slight nerf on Meltas, probably in general. Range is down and the strength is down. Still really good into small vehicles, but shooting at like a Land Raider all of a sudden is not nearly as attractive anymore. Then we have the Storm Bolter, which is just Rapid Fire 2. This one is the same as before, and then the Twin Heavy Bolter is the exact same as before, which kind of means that both the Storm Bolter and the Twin Heavy Bolter are slightly nerfed because their strength didn't go up, but toughness did. However, the Twin Heavy Bolter has sustained hits 1, which means 6s to hit generate an additional hit, as well as the Twin Linked rule. And Twin Linked is you reroll the wound roll. So while you are wounding stuff worse now, well, not worse, but things are more tough and therefore you wound them worse, you do get to reroll the wound roll. So that might make up for it. I haven't done the math exactly, but in general, I think that it's mostly the same. Finally, they can now give it melee weapons because, you know, it's a profile-based thing. So it does have 6 attacks at weapon skill 4, strength 8, AP 0, damage 1, and that is totally just to show like, oh yeah, the Rhino's gonna run you over. It's not gonna do a whole lot because, you know, the generic dude in Warhammer 40k is 500 kilograms and can punch hole through concrete, but it does do some damage. So yeah, another good thing about the new datasheet is the way they can do these things. For the rules of the Land Raider, you of course have a Deadly Demise, otherwise known as Explosion. D6 meaning that within 6 inches, it explodes for 6 mortal wounds. Deadly Demise is just always 6 inches as far as I'm aware, so it doesn't matter if you're a Dreadnought or Drukhari, what do you call them, the Raider, or a Land Raider. You always explode within 6 inches, and then the question is, how much damage do you do? The Land Raider does D6. It's also part of the Oath of Moment faction, which in other words is Space Marines, so it gets full hits and wounds rerolls against that one target. And then it also has Assault Ramp. Each time a unit disembarks from this model after it has made a normal move, that unit is still eligible to declare a charge this turn. That's good. That is just really good. A lot of vehicles in 9th edition didn't allow you to move the vehicle and then disembark, and then even fewer of those vehicles allowed you to move the model, disembark, and then charge. If any, actually, now that I think about it. But now the Land Raider does, and that's really cool because it's a tank, but it's also a transport. So the idea is that you can have some really tough guys in there, you know, like Blade Guard veterans or Terminators. Oh yeah, actually, so I'll come back to that later. But you can have those guys in it. It can go pew, 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 move up, and then the Terminators step outside, and then like, yeah, we're ready to fight. Which you couldn't do in 9th edition, where it's like, okay, so either I drop them off here, then my tank goes forward, shoots at stuff, and then my Terminators are stuck back here behind the wall. It's kind of lame. Or you could, you know, move the Land Raider up, hope it didn't die, and then next turn, they could jump out. Now, they can jump out even after it has moved. They cannot move themselves, keep that in mind, but they can move after. Or they cannot, oh my god, but they can charge, is what I'll try to say. Now, talking about transports, right? So, transport capacity. We can see here, the model has a transport capacity of 12 Adeptus Astartes infantry models, not Primaris, not Firstborn, just Adeptus Astartes infantry models. And then each Jump Pack, Wolfen, Gravis, or Terminator model takes up the space of 2, and each Centurion model takes up the space of 3. Praise the Omnissiah. Bless the Emperor. Corn for the cornflakes. Whatever. Space Marine vehicles actually function now. Because throughout most of 9th edition, half of them just didn't have a purpose in so many armies. Because they couldn't transport Gravis or Primaris. But now they can. Holy shit. You know what? The Space Marines can actually fit inside that drop pod. Turns out they just measured incorrectly. In fact, Space Marines, even though they are like a little bit taller, can still fit inside a drop pod. God bless. Very good. Very happy. It was just silly before. Anyways, that was the Land Raider. Moving on, we have the leader of the Imperium. He is what's his title again? The Regent of the Empire? Empire Regent? Whatever. In any case, Robute Guilliman, Robot Gorilla Man, Robert the Technical Man, Rick the Morty Man. You get the point. The big guy, the man, the Primarch, right? The only, not the only Loyalist Primarch anymore. The only Loyalist Primarch throughout 9th edition until a few weeks ago when the line came out. Whatever, let's just get into it. So, Robute Guilliman, I just closed Wikipedia. Let me just open that up real again. Let's see, we want to go look at Space Marines. And then we want to look at Robute Guilliman. Holy shit. Space Marines have so many HQ choices. Where is Robute? Robert, where are you? Oh wait, he's in the Lord of War category, isn't he? There he is, Robute Guilliman. Right, so, same movement as before, very good. He was toughness 6 before, he is now toughness 9, which is the same as a Rhino. So he has gotten tougher than what he was before. He has a 2-up save, same as before, 10 wounds, he was 9 before. Leadership 5, so basically really freaking hard to fail your Battle Shock test. And then OC 4, so he can't beat just a small squad of dudes, even if they're just OC 1. But if he kills one of them, then he ties the objective. Makes sense. Now, some of you who haven't kept up with 10th edition might be like, oh no, he has 10 wounds, you cannot use Lookout Sir anymore. Lookout Sir doesn't exist anymore. Your characters can either, some of them can join units, and those that can't usually have a rule that gives them a rule called Lone Operative. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But for Robute Guilliman, his ranged weapon, the Hand of Dominion, it is Rapid Fire 2, range 30, so within 15 inches he gets +2 to his shots. 2 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, AP 2, damage 2. This got a glow up, didn't it? The Hand of Dominion was 24, Rapid Fire 3, 6, 1, 2. Yeah, so it went back, let's see. It went back 1 shot base, and then another shot when in rapid fire range, but it gained 6-inch range, gained +1 AP, and then stayed at the same strength as before, which, as I've talked about earlier, is a slight nerf, because, you know, toughness is higher, but if the strength doesn't follow, then it's a slight nerf. That's fine. So, you know, it's a good bolt gun, basically. A really good bolt gun, or a really good heavy bolter is what I meant to say. For his melee weapons, he fucks. Oh lord, does Gorilla Man fucking melee. So, Emperor Sword has devastating wounds, which are 6s to wound, or sorry, critical hits to wound, do mortals instead of normal damage. So 14 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 8, AP 3, damage 2. This kills like a squad of Space Marines every time you swing, right? I'm fairly certain it does, because you're hitting on 2s, so an average of 12 hits. Then you are wounding on 2s, because you're strength 8, so an average of 10 hits. And then AP 3, so a 6-up save for Space Marines, and everyone they fail is a dead Marine. On a 6-up, they're dead. Yeah, so he picks up a Space Marine squad, basically, whether they be Space Marines or Chaos Space Marines, with his profile, and basically every single time. And if there's any 6s, the damage spills over because it becomes mortals, because of this devastating wounds. So that's real good. And we didn't know this at the time when this came out, but they hadn't clarified whether or not you had to choose one weapon to attack with, or if you could use all your weapons. They have since then clarified you can only use one weapon unless it says extra attacks on it, because otherwise the Hand of Dominion coupled with the Emperor's Sword would be ridiculous. So the Hand of Dominion are lethal hits, so critical hits, auto wound. 7 attacks at strength, 7 attacks at weapon skill 2, strength 14. Remember that the Land Raider, right? The Land Raider, humble Land Raider is toughness 12. So he's wounding a Land Raider on 3s. Okay. And then AP 4, damage 4. So once again, let's do the math real quick. 7 attacks hitting on 2s, so one of those miss, so 6 hits. He's then wounding a Land Raider on 3s, so 4 wounds. At AP 4, so the Land Raider has a 2-up save, so it would be saving on 6s. So it fails, on average it fails all of them. So on average, it takes 16 damage. And you know how many wounds a Land Raider has? It has 16 wounds. So on average, Guilliman picks up a Rhino. That's really good, and we haven't accounted for Oath of Moment, so he also gets rerolls to hit and wound against a specific target. He slaps real fucking good. Probably a lot better than he did before, because before he could either, let's see here, Emperor Sword was, how many attacks he had? He had 6 attacks before, at +2 strength, so 8, 4, 3, and then 6s did D3 mortal wounds in addition. And now it is 14 to 8, 3, 2. Probably pretty comparable, but I feel like 14 attacks takes the edge here. Not gonna sit and do too much math about it, but I think the new profile of the Emperor's Sword is better. And then the Hand of Dominion was strength 12, AP 3, damage 4. It is 4/4 now at 14. probably the same, but increased in AP and increased number of attacks because he only had 6 attacks before. Yeah. I dare say, Robute Guilliman is no longer a book nerd. He's a fisticuff nerd. Oh boy, you don't want to square up against him. He will beat the ever-living shit out of you. And that's before we even start talking about his abilities, because he is the author of the Codex. That didn't even sound Roman or British. I don't even. Anyways, author of the Codex. In your command phase, select one author of the Codex ability, see left. Until the start of your next command phase, this model has that ability. So the author of the Codex, you can choose one of these 3. You can either let them get +1, or let Adeptus Astartes units within 6 of this model add 1 to the objective control characteristics of models in that unit, and you can reroll Battle Shock and Leadership test taken for that unit. So everything within 6, this is an aura, it gets +1 OC, so you can steal objectives, and if the opponent has some way to either get you to take a Battle Shock or deal enough damage that you take a Battle Shock, you can reroll that one. So if you fail it, you get another try. Really good. He also has the Master of Battle ability. After you have selected an enemy unit using the Oath of Moment ability, select a second enemy unit until the start of your next command phase if the first unit selected has been destroyed. Each time a friendly Space Marine model makes an attack that targets the second enemy unit, you can reroll the hit and wound roll. So basically he says, hey, good job killing that guy. Now we're killing this guy. Once again, wow, Oath of Moment, real good. When you get to do it twice, also real good. It does, of course, come at the, you need to kill the first target before you get access to it on the second target. But let's say again, Imperial Knights is just the easy big thing target. Let's say there's an armature with 4 wounds left, right? And you don't want to put too much firepower into that guy because there's also a big knight coming down. I forget their names right now. The Questoris Knight. Let's just say that's the name. I have no idea. But you can see both of them. You want to kill off the armature, but you also kind of want to get the rerolls against the big guy. Well, if you do this, you can pick the first target as the armature, kill off that armature, and then any remaining firepower you have can go into the big knight, and they still benefit from the rerolls. Very good. Very strong, very scary. Let's hope Space Marines are not overpowered. And then his final author of the Codex ability is Supreme Strategist. Once per turn, you can target one friendly Adeptus Astartes unit within 12 of this model with a stratagem for 0 command points, and can do so even if another unit from your army has already been targeted with this stratagem. That's just good. It's just good, It does require you to be within 12. But you can do double command reroll. You can do double heroic intervention. You can do double armor of contempt. We've seen that stratagem, which is -1 AP on whatever unit you want. You can do that twice, not on the same unit, but on 2 units. If you do that, and it's once per turn, so it's your turn and the opponent's turn. So if you do that, your turn and opponent's turn for 5 turns. You just generated an additional 10 command points, which is insane because you only get 10 command points in 10th edition, as far as we know, because in the demo games they showed at Warhammer Fest, you would gain 1 at the start of each player turn. So 1 in your player turn, and then 1 in your opponent's player turn. And there's 5 turns, so that's 10. We have since then seen a lot of abilities to generate CP or to either give out a stratagem for free. But boy, this is really good. That's really freaking good. His other that was the author of the Codex ability, and you have to choose one of these, which might be a little bit hard because this one obviously is something where you very specifically want to either steal an objective or you want to negate Battle Shock, whereas the other 2 are like almost always good to take. This one might be Master of Battle, where you pick a second Oath of Moment. You, of course, want to know you actually kill the first Oath of Moment target, otherwise this has no effect. And the Supreme Strategist also kind of hinges of you having 2 targets to use a stratagem on. But you probably do. You probably do. So, yeah, these 2 down here, probably always a good pick. The one on top, more specifically, when you want to go and steal an objective, or I guess want to make sure your opponent doesn't steal it from you. And then the Ultramarine's bodyguard rule is that if he is within 3 inches of 1 or more friendly Astartes infantry units, not models, units, but a unit could be 1 model, Anyways, he has the lone operative ability, which is that he cannot be targeted by range attacks unless he is the closest model within 12, I believe. Oh no, it's either the closest model or you're within 12. Am I getting this completely wrong? Let me know in the comments below if I'm doing this wrong, but I believe that's how it is. You cannot target him if you're more than 12 away, and if you are within 12, you can. So this is kind of the new look out, sir rule for the big guys, because other units other characters can join a unit, but Robute Guilliman is a monster, so he cannot, and yet he doesn't have the leader keyword, despite him being a leader, but he kind of has a leader ability in Look Out Sir, which is now the lone operative ability. So it all works out. And finally, you have the Armor of Fate. The first time this model is destroyed, roll 1d6 at the end of the phase. On a 3+, set this model back up on the battlefield as close as possible to where it was destroyed and not within engagement range of any enemy models, with a 6 wounds remaining. They changed it from a 4-up to a 3-up. So, if you use Robute Guilliman, you always fail this. If you play against Robute Guilliman, they never fail this. That's my experience against revive strats. They always work against me, they never work for me. But yeah, that's just a buff on his old ability. His old ability was on a 4-up, let's see here, on a 4-up, and with d6 wounds remaining, that's the same as, no, it's just 6 now. Instead of d6, it's just 6 now. So that ability, straight up better. He did lose his 3-up invulnerable save, kind of to be expected. I have a feeling that 3-up invulnerable saves are not really a thing anymore, because you either can join a unit, so you basically have, plus how many more wounds that unit has, or you have the lone operative ability. So characters with a 3-up invuln, I'd be very surprised to see that unless it's like a once per turn or once per game ability. I don't think we'll see it. Who knows? But I don't think we will. Phew, oh boy, I've just spent recording-wise 40 minutes. I might cut this down in editing, but there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Warhammer, huh? And we're not quite done yet. There's also the weapon spotlight of the heavy Onslaught Gatling cannon. Same range as now, same number of attacks, same ballistic skill, same strength. Was this strength 7 before? God damn it. Why do you need to make me look all this up? Redemptor Dreadnought. Onslaught was strength 6, AP 1, damage 1. It is now strength 6, AP dash, damage 1. But with devastating wounds, which are critical hits to wound, or mortals instead. So the Gatling gun is basically the same. It's an anti-horde clearing gun. Go brrrr, and then you kill off some gaunts. It does have some damage potential against something a bit tougher. They will have a good save against it because there's no AP. But every 6 is a mortal, so if you're looking to shoot some Terminators just to take a little bit of their wounds off, with 12 attacks on 3s and then on 3s again, that's gonna be like 1 or 2 mortal wounds on a Terminator squad. That's fine. That's okay. And if you get 1 more through, then you actually kill a Terminator. So not half shabby. Losing the AP is probably just a consequence of 10th edition going back on lethality in terms of raising the AP at least. Devastating wounds might upset the AP 1. Again, haven't done the math. But in general, I think this is completely fine and seems dope. And oh boy, then we have the Heavy Laser Destroyer, which has the heavy keyword. It's called a Heavy Laser Destroyer, which means that if it doesn't move, it gets +1 to hit. So 72-inch range, 2 attacks, ballistic skill 3, strength 16, AP 4, damage D6 +4. So if you want to kill a tank, you use this, alright? Use this. Let's say you're shooting at another Rhino, let's say you're shooting at a Land Raider, which is toughness 12. Let's say you didn't move, so you're hitting on 2s, with 2 attacks, that's 2 hits, then wounding on 3s, so that is going to be, most of the time it's going to be 2 wounds, but I think it's like what? It's going to be 66% chance, 66% chance of success. Yeah, math is hard when it's later in the day. So most of the time it's going to be 2 wounds as well, and then AP 4, so they're saving on 6s. So in general, they fail both. Then on average, it's going to be 3.57 plus 8, 15 damage. 15 damage on average, which is just 1 wound too little to kill the Land Raider, but it's still a lot of damage. And if you just roll a little bit better than average, then wow, that's pretty good. It's a good weapon. as with all things we see in these previews, we don't have even half the picture, and we don't know the points cost. But what I am a little bit scared of, and I'm a bit less scared of it after seeing some more stratagems and a few more army rules. I was a bit scared there was just going to be a vehicle meta, because every vehicle is like immune to infantry guns and infantry melee. And it was just going to be, all right, I brought 5 tanks, and to counter or to have a chance against my 5 tanks, you also need 5 tanks. It's gotten better since we've seen some more rules, but we still haven't seen a lot of anti-vehicle weapons, which I thought was going to be the answer for infantry. Still really haven't seen any of those. Still a little bit scared of it, but less scared of it. But if you want to kill a tank, the heavy laser destroyer on the repulsor, it's a good choice. It seems to be a good choice. Now, for the stratagem spotlight, we have only in death does duty end. In the fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its target, one Adeptus Astartes unit from your army that was selected as the target of one or more of the affecting or the attacking unit's attacks. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit is destroyed, if that model has not fought this phase, do not remove it from play. The destroyed model can fight after attacking, blah 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 blah. Fight on death. Now, a thing to note is that this is not normal fight on death. This is the fight on death like the World Eaters have it in 9th edition currently, where you need to declare it before any dice are rolled. So you don't know if 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 guys are going to die, but however many models die gets to attack. Now, it is 2 command points, but if we look up here at Robute Guilliman, you might remember that he makes someone use a stratagem for 0 CP, and you can do it twice. So if you have 2 units in melee, one of them is inside 12 of Robute Guilliman, and the other one is not, then when your opponent hits the one that is not inside the aura, you can use a stratagem for 2 CP, and then when it goes to the other unit that is inside the 12-inch aura, you can then use the stratagem again, but for 3. So yeah, double fight on death, potentially, with Robute Guilliman. Very, very strong. And that's it for the Space Marine faction focus. Since then, we have seen basically every other faction. As I'm recording this, I believe tomorrow is Grey Knights, and then we need Drukhari and Gene Stealer Cults. And then I'm unsure if the other Space Marine supplements are getting a detachment. If they are, we're probably going to see those as well. And then we're done. Then we just wait for Leviathan to come out, and we can play 10th edition. Yeah. So overall, Space Marines have some real damn solid rules. So the oath of moment is obviously very much kill this one thing. But then combat doctrines is like your entire army can go crazy. Yeah, when I first saw oath of moments, I was like, okay, so Space Marines are gonna be the we pick this target, then we take this objective, then we pick this target, then we take that objective. But honestly, all the balls are in the air right now. I have no fucking clue how good or how bad Space Marines are going to be. If I had to give them a grade right now, you know what? Let's do that. Whenever I do one of these faction focus things, I'm gonna give them a grade on the tier list. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. One moment. Okay, never mind. I'm too lazy to create a tier list right now. I'll have it by the next video, maybe. We'll see. Space Marines go into A tier. From the previews, please hold. From the previews alone, I will say Space Marines are an A-tier faction. Really good army rule, really good combat doctrine. Robute Guilliman, really good. Land Raider, pretty good. Stratagem, fight on death, pretty solid. Expensive at 2 CP when you only get 10 throughout the game, but again, they have ways to cheat their way out of that. Yeah, Space Marines look pretty damn solid. I will place them in the A tier. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's been a while since I've uploaded anything to my channel. I've just been lazy. I was like, why do I have to make the content? Why can't someone else make the content? And then recently I just kind of like, oh wait, I like making content. That's why I do it. I like talking about things that I like. And then I want to share it with people that also like it. Yeah. Look, that's just how it is. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. If you made it all the way through, it's like 40 minutes long, Jesus Christ. If you did enjoy it, consider hitting the subscribe button. You can check out my links in the description, and poopy pants.